Hi, folks. Welcome to Inside the Leader's Mind, where what's in the way becomes the way. I'm your host, David Susan, and I'm excited for our guest today, Rob Kaczmark. He's been creating high quality, authentically Catholic content for almost 20 years, which is impressive considering he still hasn't figured out how to take a day off. He's the president and CEO of Spirit Juice Studios. They're an award winning video production house that proves Catholics can have good lighting. He's a Chicago native, lifelong Catholic, and still somehow finds time to be a cinematographer, a DP, that's director of photography, a director, and mostly so he doesn't have to trust anyone else with the camera, which we'll talk about trust issues. I think we're going to have to bring that up today. And when he's not running a team of creative geniuses, Rob calls himself an amateur filmmaker, but a professional wheelie guy. And we got to dig into what you mean because I don't want to assume. I think I know what that is, but you got to tell me. And he's got a deep passion for arcades. How about that? A little retro there. Lego. And every once in a while, he'll bust out a breakdance move, usually followed by an Advil, some stretching, hot water. He's blessed with a wife, two boys who keep him grounded, humble, and they occasionally remind him not every family outing needs to be filmed in 4K. Please welcome Rob Kaczmark. Hey, Rob.
Hey, David, thanks for having me.
Oh my gosh, you are so funny. I told Rob before we hit record, I said it's probably my favorite intro so far because I don't write these, I let them write them. So nice job.
Good. Well, my mom always says, don't take yourself too serious. So I try to have a little fun with that. So, it's an ode to my mom.
Love it. She's a good lady, or is. So good.
Thankfully she's still here. Great lady. Great
Awesome.
lady.
Awesome. Okay. So I got to ask you, first of all, I got to ask you about the wheelie guy. What do you mean?
On my bike. So I've been bike tricks. I've been obsessed with
bicycle.
Yeah. Bicycle. Yeah.
Okay.
Not motorbike, pedal. BMX was when I started as a kid, but now I ride these they're like big boy BMXs. So they're like 29 inches. And thankfully I could ride a wheelie for blocks. And it's a pretty good time. I'll say that much. It's a pretty good time. Everyone loves a wheelie. Everyone loves a wheelie.
They go down the street watching people just ride it's crazy. You're hilarious. That's pretty funny. So to get started, tell us a little bit about really what you do and maybe your path to getting where you're at today.
So I run a team over 30 employees and then a lot more subcontractors too. And we essentially make videos for Catholics, for Catholic organizations, Catholic businesses. And we also do it on the secular side too. But the company started to kind of serve the church in that. I would say I don't necessarily follow the mold for certain Catholics. If you were to see me in real life, I'm almost head to toe in tattoos. And I have a certain artistic preference on things. And years ago, like 20 years ago, Catholics were making just terrible videos. Just like it was so bad. And honestly, I was making terrible videos too, but I just thought for some reason I could do it better. And I saw a need for it. And so I was excited about trying to do that in the Catholic space. And through that, we've also worked with other brands too, Nike, Amtrak, Philip Morris. Yes, we did a cigarette ad. Well, I guess kind of a cigarette. It was they were in the US for like a minute, but they're not e-cigs. What are they called? It's basically a cigarette that you put in this heater and then it heats it up, but it's smokeless. It's kind of wild. In Europe, it's really popular. It was called IQOS out here. So it was a whole ad campaign and then they couldn't, I don't know, it fizzled out. I digress. Making videos and storytelling it's been something that I've learned over time through running a business. And I just think it's the most powerful medium out there right now is video.
And I'm curious why and I believe that, but what is your belief set around why video is so important today?
I mean, I think first off, the nostalgia factor, and maybe just because I'm a millennial and millennials are obsessed with nostalgia these days. You can watch
Lego.
Yeah, I guess, arcades, Lego. There's things that you watch when you're younger and they just stick with you and they're just in your head. People say like, oh, this lives rent free in my head. the combination of audio and visual, for whatever reason, I mean, outside of maybe a smell, because people say like, a certain smell can bring you back to like a certain point in time, but that's harder to sort of replicate and share. And there's not like, your phone, the new iPhone's not going to have the smell app. So to replicate video and audio, that combination can create, and I would like to see what it looks like in your brain, but these like pathways that just give you such a strong connection to something and can change your mind really quickly. And maybe on major issues, but you can watch something and say, oh yeah, maybe I do need that. Or, oh, I didn't even think of it like that. And it's something that's, for now, there's nothing that's going to replace that. The only thing that I think is close to replacing that would be VR, which has an even more powerful experience. But that's still video and audio combined. It's
Yeah.
nothing more. It's just more of a more immersive thing. And so I think if you're not telling stories, you're not using video to share what you're passionate about, you are missing probably the greatest opportunity in this modern age.
And it's because it's everywhere. I mean,
It's
it's
everywhere.
obviously you do more production, but you see it on all the social media, and it's really people don't read as much. They skim, but they don't sit down and read. They'd rather watch a video. So I agree. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not like I mean, you could call this the modern age, maybe like the 80s, if you will, or the 70s, where like TV, started to become in more and more households. And now it's transferred to phones, devices, and all that, but it's still the same thing. And prior to that, yeah, if you weren't writing something in a book or a newspaper, but this is what we have. And I don't know. I mean, just think about your own stuff. How much time do you spend watching videos? It's probably more than you want to admit. And
Way more than I want to admit.
that's
My
just the world
excuse
right now.
is my excuse is I do it when I'm on the treadmill or the rower. That's my excuse. As long as I'm moving, that's which leads to a longer workout, so I can watch the whole
Burning
James
more
Bond
calories.
series, which is what I'm doing now. Let me ask you about leadership a little bit here. What or who shaped how you lead today? You said you've got about 30-ish employees and then contractors you work with, in and out on projects. But who or what has shaped how you lead today?
I would first say my dad. There's a few different people for different things, right? I think my dad shaped who I am as far as my character. The thing he ingrained in me, he goes, you don't lie, you don't cheat, and you don't steal. And so that was the thing just growing up where he was, honest as the day is long. I remember one of my first jobs was cutting lawns for the neighbors. And I went around and I like, knock on the door. Hey, can I cut your lawn? Okay. How much? And then this one guy, he was like, well, let me think about it. And so he came back, he was just down the street and he came back a few days later and I was outside with my dad. He goes, his name was Mr. Eichmann. Probably God rest his soul at this point because he was older at the time. He's like, okay, yeah, you can cut my lawn for $10. And my dad's like, $10? That's too much. $7. I was like, Dad, you just negotiated it lower than it should be. He goes, you'd be paying too much. He shouldn't pay you that much for it. And so and my dad he's still here. He's just so honest and hardworking. And so like, I think as a leader, you have to be the thing that you want your employees to do. And so like, first and foremost, that. After that, I look at a lot of bosses that I've had and take the good and the bad, try to take the good and don't do the bad. If I was being really honest, I'd also say Gary Vaynerchuk. I listened to so much of his podcast, like early on, maybe not early on, but like, going back like pre-COVID, I remember I started listening to stuff and I've never met the guy. So, this is purely just from listening to the Gary V audio experience. I think he's got a lot of good things to say. And I think it sounds like he leads people well. And so taking a lot of that, and then like trying to plow through almost every leadership book I can, and pulling different pieces out of that. So, but my dad would be the first one.
I love that. That's really cool. And if you think about your team, if your team had to describe you in one word on your best day, let's take your best day.
Okay, I was
What,
going to say
what, well, yeah, come on. I got to keep it kind of positive. But on your best day, what would that word be? Why do you, and why as a leader or as a
passionate.
human Passionate?
I think I would hope they would say passionate. because I think when they see that I like something or I want something to get done, they're, I'll essentially move heaven and earth to make it happen. And sometimes, you kind of break a couple things when you do that. But um, I believe they would say that I'm passionate on my best day.
And how does that ever, and you kind of alluded a little bit, how does that, on a good day, that's awesome. Does that ever backfire? And if so, how so?
Yeah, all the time. Because the thing is, if you're passionate about something, um, you usually don't stop until you sort of have what that thing is. It's hard to be passive and passionate. Usually, passionate and comes with, if you think of, just anything that someone that's passionate, they're putting their whole, if things aren't moving as quick as I would maybe think they should be, that can cause friction. If
Yeah.
things aren't getting done to how I think they should be, that can cause friction. So it can cause a lot. I think what I've tried to learn is more patience. And I think one of the biggest lessons I've learned is, and this is really through growing, where it's like, no one's going to do it as good as I can in my mind, and that's okay. Because if there's a quote that help
So
people
you've
here,
accepted that.
you have to. If you don't accept it, because the thing I tell people is, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And so
I love that.
I think there's different times when that quote makes more sense. But when you're building a team, you can't you can't build a massive team, have everything your way. It's like, did you ever see the movie? I have young kids. No, is it the Lorax? No,
Oh,
no, Cat in the Hat.
oh
You ever
yeah.
seen the movie Cat in the Hat with Michael
Yeah.
Myers?
Yeah.
And the one guy, he's from I forget where he's from, but he's the boss. He's like a germaphobe. I kind of relate to him a little bit. But he like someone like touches his hand. He's like, "You're fired." But everything has to be so perfect in every sort of way. So I think like you can build something big and have everything perfect, but you're going to be an insane person that no one wants to be around. So if you want to have any decency of being like a normal person that, or just like a somewhat likable person, you got to let go. The thing I would always tell myself when we were growing is like, if you want to grow, you got to let go. And so it's just constantly letting go of stuff, constantly letting go of stuff. And yeah, there's going to be plenty of things that are not going to be going how you want. But if you want to go how you want, you're going to have to shrink back down, and then you're doing something different then. And so it's like, it's hard, but you have to let go at some point.
Was there a moment in your career, especially in a leadership role, where that light switch went on? Meaning, was there a specific moment where you realized, holy cow, this is, I can't, I've got to let go, or
Oh yeah.
something like that?
Yeah. Actually, I'll tee it up with a story before that. So we were filming for this guy, Johnny. Maybe I'll just leave it as Johnny. Anyways, this is on a commercial gig, and he was a producer for Disturbed. So if you were like a 90s rock kid, if you remember Disturbed and a bunch of like the kind of like rap metal kind of like era. So it was actually for Fender, and he was doing some stuff. So we were there for like 2 days. The first day he was like talking about it, playing the stuff, and the second day it was just more B-roll of him. So B-roll just kind of like filming him doing his stuff. And I would say almost, so he's in this downtown Chicago, this massive building. It was actually a really cool building. Like one of the floors was just for the artists. One floor had like a bar with like a car in there. This huge thing, this huge like thing that he built. And one of the days he spent soldering a board that needed to be repaired. And at the end of it, I was like, "Hey, how come like you're soldering this?" I'm thinking in my head, like, you could be doing a bunch of like producing other bands and whatever. He's like, "Well, I'm just trying to save a few bucks and do this." I thought, I could learn it. And in my head, I'm like, I don't know that much about business. The company was pretty small at the time, but just me, young in that age, I still was like, I think your time's probably better spent doing something else. So that just went away in the back of my brain for a long time. Fast forward to here, and I was probably had about a team of maybe 15 or 20. And one of the nights I would have, well, it was a bad habit to break. I would just work all night. I just kind of like work all day, work all night. And it was kind of like still in that. So I was here pretty late. and I was zip tying cables underneath one of the desks because I'm, like things a certain way, I like things organized, and I didn't think anyone could zip tie the cables as good as I can. I asked a couple of people to do it. So, anyways, I'm there, and one of the last people, she's in, and she's closing out. She goes, "Oh, you're still here, Rob. What are you doing?" I was like, "Oh, just zip tying these cables." She goes, "Should the owner of the company be zip tying these cables?" And she said it with a little bit of attitude, and it stung. Like I would say, in one way you could say she spoke out of line, but in another way she spoke exactly what I need to hear then. And I was like, crap. Yeah, you're right. I shouldn't be like, someone else should be doing this. I need to let
Now,
go
this
of this.
just to clarify, this was not a 20-second job you were doing.
No, it was like a 30-minute job. Yeah, because I was like, I had to get all the cable. Listen, if you're gonna zip tie cables the right way, you gotta get them all together, take them all out, prep the ones, and then get them in. And so there was more to it. There's probably a 20-second version of it. That's probably what most people do, but I wasn't doing that one. And that kind of started myself thinking of like, okay, I shouldn't be doing something like there, and it takes a while because when you start a business and you have to do everything, it's hard to let go, but you got to. It just but so that was the moment for me that always sticks out. It's like, should I really be doing this right now?
I love that. And, so someone listening to this might go, oh my gosh, that's ridiculous. Just do it. But, what I'm hearing is i- it's, it's more the, what's the word I'm looking for? It's more of the indicator of making you think about, if I continue to go down this road, always doing these jobs myself,
Yeah.
then it's going to hold me back. So it's not the one event itself, I'm imagining. It's kind of the impetus, the straw that breaks the camel back. Is that,
That
am I
exactly.
tracking on
Yeah.
that?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah. It's definitely the indicator. It's like when I was buying it was a pretty nice camera. It's a Ari Amira. It's like it's more of a docu-style thing, but I was buying it from this guy, and uh he actually directed a bunch of stuff on Netflix and some pretty big shows, to be honest. And he was still making. I was like, are you getting out of the business? He goes, no. He's like, but I have to sell my camera because as a director, if you own a camera, you're put into a different bucket. And it's like, huh, that's interesting. And so it's
Interesting.
kind of that same sort of thing. Like you have to, it doesn't, that's like zip tying those cables for 20 minutes or 30 minutes or whatever, even an hour, call it an hour, doesn't going to change the metrics or stuff, but it's how I'm thinking about stuff. What I need to be thinking about is, okay, who can do that here and enable that so I can do other things. And so you have to it is a mental shift. It's kind of, it's all mental in some degree or another. I remember when I was in the thick of stuff, I had gained a bunch of weight. I couldn't get it off. People said, oh, you have to, it starts in your mind before anything else. And I was like, okay. And then finally I hit a breaking point where I was like, oh, I just, in my mind, I was like, I will do whatever it takes to lose this weight. And then I did the thing that it took. And so if you want to change your situation around you, as far as being able to delegate, it has to start here. And you kind of just have to have in some way this epiphany moment where you're like, nope, can't do this anymore. And you have to, usually it comes with some sort of sting, and for me, even the losing weight thing, I just remember I saw a picture of me with my kids and I was just kind of disgusted by myself. And I was like, I don't want this picture. And then I was like, wait, do I not want to have any pictures of me and my kids for the rest of my life? It's like, no. It's like, all right, I got to get out of this. And so then that set it off. Sorry, I'm kind of bouncing around a little bit, but
No,
it starts mental though.
no, I think what you're sharing is relevant because so much of what we do, and I'm guilty of it, right? In my business, where it's like, oh, I'll do it myself. I'll do it
Mhm.
myself. I'll do it myself. And the thought process is, oh, it'll take me longer to train someone else. Well, the problem is, then the next time it has to be done, no one else is trained, so I do it. Then the next time I do it, and the next time. So for me, it was just like you're saying, it takes a point where you get to the point where you're like, all right, you know what? I'm going to invest the time. This one time is going to take longer because maybe I do have, if they don't know it, I have to train them. But then like my assistant right now is fabulous. I took all this time up front to invest in her, and she just goes, and I don't have to worry about it. And had I waited, I'd still be doing it all myself, going, well, I'll do it later. I'll do it later. I'll do those tasks later. So I love that story. Um, Tell me about a moment, especially from a leadership, that really tested you, and maybe something that didn't go perfectly, but it taught you a lot.
Oh man. Um,
A moment that tested your leadership. Let's talk leadership. Tested your leadership, but it didn't go well, but you learned from it.
I think about one. I mean, I feel like there's been several. Almost feels like every day, but one thing in particular. So I was trying to be a better leader. So I had worked with this coach to to take a look at stuff. And one of the things he suggested was a 360 review for me, with all the employees. And we had never done anything like that prior. And so he facilitated it. And essentially, I got a 20-page report back from all the employees. It was anonymous, but sometimes you can kind of tell, like, based on, what it's saying. And it was just like everything everyone hated about Rob, with like 2 pages of like, well, what he's doing okay. And uh, it tested me quite a bit in the sense of just like, there was the part of me that's like, well, yeah, they don't get this context. They don't see this. They don't see that. And I think the biggest thing is like perception's greater than reality. So yeah, they may not know everything that's going on. That's how things work. That's no one's going to have full, and perception is greater than reality for many things. And so it tested me because I was like, my gut reaction was to push back and to be like, what the heck, and try to validate and explain all this stuff. But I mean, if you've been in a relationship with someone, that you've been to those things where this person sees it like this and this person sees it like this. And, it's not about trying to like, sure, you can share your perspective, but at the end of the day, unless you really take in what they're saying and let that affect how you go about it. So it was my blueprint for the year. It was everything. It's like, okay, right, It's like, okay, this is how I'm going to go forward. This is how I'm going to go forward. This is how I'm going to go forward. So that was something that I think had a positive impact, although it stung a lot. Um,
Did
in the
you
sense of,
did you in that moment, what did it how long before you got to the point where and I'm going to call it ego, right? Or identity or
Mhm.
how long before you really accepted and said, "Okay, I got to adapt and accept this."
It's a couple of weeks. Yeah, it was a couple of weeks because it took a little bit to have it really settle it. Like you first read some of the stuff and you're like, whoa, whoa, and you almost got to put it down. Like it's like too. Um, I don't know if it's just a me thing or if you could relate to. Like, would you ever read something and you feel like your like brain like flashes, or you're like you can't believe what you just saw, or
Oh
like
yeah.
so like you kind of have one of those and you're like, whoa, okay, all right, let me try this again. And so it took a while just to get through it all because it was just like it was a lot. But I'm grateful for it. I mean, I think it's like you can't, going back to the working out thing, like you can't get stronger unless you lift weights. And so you have to go through fire, you have to go through pain to get better on the other side. And there's a quote that says, suffering either makes you bitter or better. So certainly I could go through that and then be like, screw you guys, and then, but if you choose better, then there's your life can incrementally, like you have to take that in, but that pain, you don't get better without pain, in my opinion. And it just comes with the territory.
It's interesting. I want to bring this up because sometimes that pain i- isn't always directly personal like that, meaning one of the things that I work with executives and the people I coach and the companies I speak with a lot is they'll say, "Oh, I've got morale issues, I've got engagement issues, turnover. They're not as committed. They stab each other in the back." And I'll talk to them about change, and I'm like, "Look, you're pointing the finger at all them, but you're the leader. It's
Yeah.
what you do that is, and they don't want to change." And usually that it's not until that gets to the point where turnover is so high and people are leaving, but they oftentimes just I think their perception of themselves, their ego gets in the way. And kudos to you that you actually looked in the mirror and go, "Hey, I'm gonna get better." But many people don't. And why in your I'm sure you've seen this in other people you've worked for and people you know. Do you have any other than what I've shared? What do you think? Why do you think other leaders don't change? They don't adapt when they're not as effective as they could be. And there's a million books out there that explain how you could be better.
I've before running a business, even running a business, you work for different clients. I mean, it's like people say, "Oh, I start my own business. I don't have a boss." It's like, well, I kind of have a lot of bosses. Every client's a
Bosses, yeah.
boss,
Yeah.
But even so, I have experience with that. And then before that, I worked for in corporate America, and then just other like small businesses and different things. And so I've had many different bosses, and I've seen, ones where like, man, they don't really have like self-awareness, right? Kind of like the Michael Scott sort of thing, but like not in a funny way.
Right, right, right.
Uh, and you're like, why don't they I would never do that. You say it's because it's easy on the other side when you're on the receiving end of like maybe a bad manager or a bad boss to say, oh, I'd never do that. I'd never do that. And
Monday
then when
morning
you're,
quarterback, right?
yeah.
It's easy, right? Oh, I would do it differently.
I would totally do it differently. Yeah. And then you're there and you're like, oh, and then you fall into these things. And then, in the instance of the 360, you see that. And I think like why some people stay, like why they don't change when they could is like, it's comfortable there.
Mm-hmm.
And there's this, I mean, pride before the fall, right? Like your ego is a very delicate thing that people, like any faltering and saying like, well, I don't know this, or like trying to change, it's really, really challenging. It is probably one of the most challenging things to like put your, take your ego out of the situation,
Mm-hmm.
and approach something, and even go into the people like near you and say like, listen, I don't know what I'm doing right now. Like this is like, I don't, and having that sense of humility. I think humility is really hard, like true humility. Like there's like the hungry humble, and I don't know, whatever that like three. What is it? What's the third thing?
I remember.
I don't know. But people throw the word humble around a lot. I
Right.
think like true humility. Um, I think it was the quote, like it's humility is not thinking less of yourself, but thinking of yourself less. Unless I said that backwards.
We're gonna have to look this up.
We'll have to look that up.
We'll
See, I
figure it
told
out
you I'm not
later.
good at quotes.
Yeah, let's skip.
I know the general gist of it, and it just takes a lot of humility to do things and think like, okay, how I probably am not doing this how it should be. How can I improve on that? And I think it's just hard for people.
So let me ask you kind of a springboard off that. When things do go wrong now, not that I'm saying they were going wrong, but when things go wrong, what's the story you tell yourself internally, the ego, and then how do you reframe it now?
This is actually something I'll take a page from Gary Vee. He says his thing is like everything's my fault, and so adopting if something goes wrong, it's my fault. And he'll give the example, which is a little extreme, but I love it. He's like, if I was driving on the street and got hit if I was going through a green light, like light's green, and I got hit by a car because they ran the red light, it's my fault. I probably should have left 2 minutes earlier. And so if something goes wrong here, I just think, okay, well, this is my fault. Even if I'm not like directly related to it, could be a policy, it could be this. And so if I feel like everything's my fault, I have the control to fix it. And when you are the owner, for the most part, you do, right? And so, ideally you're figuring out, okay, where could this have been better? Is there grace to allow for like it's just like a happenstance or something else? But being proactive in it and not feeling like a victim. I think when you make yourself the victim in a situation, you're always going to lose. You're always going to be the one to you're just going to feel like, you start to kind of crumble down and you lose that control.
When things go wrong, how do you avoid blaming others, though? How do you avoid that they make a mistake and taking the dig that impacts morale, impacts motivation, makes you feel good sometimes. Woohoo! You know, but how do you have that compassion and how do you take I'll call it the blame or however you phrased it, right?
I think you got to separate two things: your reaction and your action. So your reaction is I first hear about something, say someone dropped a camera. What the, I'm going to be pissed, right? That's my reaction.
Those
But
cameras are only like $5 or $10 to
they're
replace, right?
cheap these days. Yeah. Yeah. They
Yeah,
don't even cost that
yeah,
much.
they don't tens of thousands.
So your reactions and your actions shouldn't be the same, right? You're allowed to have your reaction to it and be upset and have that, but it should also be in a small enough space that everyone's not knowing what your reaction is, in a private thing or with a few of the select people, around you. Now, what your actions from that is, I think it's important that if someone does mess up, they should feel that sting, right? That it should be appropriate to that. Like they say as parents, like, don't punish your kids when you're still upset. And so, like, it just in the same way as like if my kids do something that's not appropriate, they're going to get a punishment that should be appropriate for that. And in a business, I'm not saying like you call it a punishment that's probably, breaking a few HR rules, but there should be a consequence. So there's an avoidance for that. They should feel a sting or something, because I've seen the same thing happen on the other side. When there's no consequence, then the employee will continue to do that same thing over and over and over again. And so it has to, like many things, the world's not black and white. It's gray. You have to look at it from the whole perspective. And so we've had people crash drones, and some we've known it's been negligence, and some of it's been just a pure honest mistake and just kind of how things happen in the situation. And so we take a look at that. I think you have to look at the whole person and the whole circumstance. And I think it's easier to do in a smaller organization and harder to do on a wider scale. And it's also challenging when you're trying to do things that are equal and fair, right? Because if you want something equal, it's the policy and it's just equal across the board. But it might
Yeah.
not be fair for that person. Like that person, there could have been circumstances. So
Right.
it's messy. It's messy, but you have to get into the weeds of it.
And I always say, and I wrote about this in my book, right? I said they're people, not robots, meaning we can't just reprogram them. They're not all the same. We really have to treat people, like I said, fair, but they're all different and they are
Right.
human. And the more I look at, and that's part of the reason I do the podcast here, the more I look at it and I say, that's just being human. Like there
Mm-hmm.
is no norm. And I wish they would all act like me, work as hard as I do what I do, be as smart as me. But they're not me and they're them. And it's almost not an excuse, but I found that the more I just accept that's what humans do,
Mm-hmm.
it it allows one to, I hate to say accept, because it's not accepting failure and mistakes. It's just being able to accept human behavior. Everyone's human, and we all make mistakes, and that's why we call it a mistake. It's why we call it an accident. It's not on purpose, right? It's, well, most of the time. But so I think that's it. So I want to bounce off kind of what you were saying a minute ago, and you talking about your team, right? Um, what do you think your team needs from you that they may not say out loud?
Right now, I think what they need is someone to be a little bit more of a cheerleader, an encourager, and setting a broader vision for the company right now. I still often find myself in the minutia of a lot of things,
Are you still
and
are you still wrapping cables, but in a different? Is that a metaphor for other
uh,
stuff?
uh, only at home
Zip
right now.
ties?
Oh, yeah, only at home or in my own office. I'll still, you might catch me zip tying a couple of things, but I've made it there. Actually, there's a place I walk by the office almost every day that the cables are a mess, and I'm like, don't do it, Rob. Don't do it. It's just gonna open up that floodgate. Um, there's still a lot of small things I think I'm still involved in when it comes to different, whether it's projects or meetings and different things, and some for good reasons, some for not. But I think it's still challenging for me to, I'm going on to, 18 years. It's hard to look at the positive sometimes, when I'm just seeing just sort of like not always the positives with stuff. And so being that encourager, and being someone that's just, yeah, in one way, a cheerleader to the team, and setting that grander vision for stuff.
Love that. Thanks for sharing that. I
Yeah.
appreciate that. So, two more questions. One is, as we move toward the end here, on in the show, I talk about inside the leader's mind, and I say what's in the way becomes the way.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes what I really mean by that is that the challenges we face really end up shaping some of our best moments potentially. So, what is something that you once felt was an obstacle, but it has really become a strength or a turning point for you?
I thought I could never put out a video that I didn't touch. Like the company, like I thought I had to always just be, at some point, like have my creative, like just I thought my career, like the company started as like, quote unquote my like creative mind, and I was like, well, that just always has to be the case, I'll always have to, and now I would say the majority of the videos that go out don't have my creative, even fingerprints, right? Like it's the other people here, and I didn't think that that was possible. But that's the only thing that's made it possible, I think, to be here this long, and to grow to what we are is letting go of that creative thing, the thing that I thought was the only thing that was, or the main thing that was driving the company. Um, and it's I think if you talk to anyone that's been in business for a while, I think you'll probably notice a similar trend.
Yeah. It's true. It's hard. And you look at any huge company that's now a billion, look at Facebook, where you get Mark Zuckerberg starting in college to what it is. You can't grow until you're willing to step away and trust others to do it. And that's,
Mhm.
I think, the hardest thing that prevents growth. Even in large companies where you have a team or a department that you manage, that the sooner that you can let go. um, you had a quote earlier and I forgot what it was, but
You
yet
gotta like, if you want to grow, you gotta let go.
if you're going to grow, you got to let go. And I think that's really the truth. All right, last question. What is the question you wish people would ask you, but they don't know to ask you?
I've thought about this a lot. I've been trying to, and I have the answer, and hopefully I can say this in the right way. What will motivate you to keep going? I get, when things are really hard, like, and I mean, it's just feeling appreciated. Like, there's a lot of different, and maybe it's just the question of like, what's motivation, but I just think like, no one necessarily asks that question. Like, what do you need, Rob, to keep? Because if you run a business, there's many times where you're just like, okay, and what's needed, what will give me fuel, I guess, that to really like, when I'm at a low point, that fuel is feeling appreciated. For me, I don't know, everyone's different, but that's the thing that, both personally and professionally, but even, even in yeah, even at the home, like, or whatever it is, doing something and just like, no, I feel very appreciated, and I'm gonna like just go through hell to get whatever I need to for this person or for the business or whatever it may be.
And sometimes that's probably why they say it's lonely at the top, right?
Because you don't necessarily feel appreciated. Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
you're
yeah.
honestly, you might get like, you definitely get all the crap, not all the crap, but like stuff, you get that. And then, some of the accolades you get, which are nice, and they're huge honor, by all means. But I think for me, what really drives the soul is the appreciation. And that's generally not something you get at the top.
Yeah, yeah. Well, thanks for sharing that.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for
Uh, if
asking.
someone want, if someone wants to learn more, get in touch. What's the best way for them to learn more about your services, you, etc.?
You can go on my Instagram. That's kind of like maybe the easiest for, it's going to help for all that stuff. So I'm just Rob Kaczmark, last name Kaczmark. A link to our website, Spirit Juice Studios. You Google Spirit Juice, you'll come up with a bunch of stuff. But yeah, you want to check me out on Instagram. You can see a cool picture of me and Jonathan Rumi. If you've ever watched The Chosen, we did a film with him
Oh yeah,
last
yeah.
year. So he is a cool guy. I was not ready for the amount of girls that will send me messages to send to Jonathan Rumi. Was not something I was expecting when I started working with him. So
That's hilarious.
it was funny.
That's too funny. And I'll make sure I put that information in the show notes. So Well, Rob,
Sweet.
thank you so much for being with me. Been an awesome guest. I appreciate you.
Thank you so much, David. It's been an honor, man.
And folks, this is Inside the Leader's Mind. And thank you so much. If you've enjoyed it, please subscribe to it. Please share this. If you know some leaders who would value hearing from other leaders, any size organizations, please refer them. We appreciate it. So I'm David Susan. This is Inside the Leader's Mind. Thanks. We'll see you next time.